Hey guys, what's up? In this video, I'm just going to go through the unwrapping process. So you've finished modeling the scene and you're happy with your sort of layout and the geometry and everything, and you've got everything you want to do. In terms of modeling, what next? What do I do now? Well, you need to go through and first clean up your model. Because this is a real-time asset for a game, you want to make it efficient. So I'm going to go through and I've largely done that already. So removing detail that's unnecessary. So for example, this pole here, I've had a lot of subdivisions originally from when I modeled it, and I've just gone through and removed extra polys. These boats had again multiple subdivisions, and then it was just a bit too inefficient. And you can see in your head-up count, so you want to have this up on display so you can see specifically what you're looking at is the tries, so there's a number of triangles, and this column's everything that's currently visible in the scene, whereas this column here is what's activated. So nothing selected. If I look at this guy, I've got 250 triangles, which is fairly reasonable for the sort of poly count budget that I'm looking at. So you want to have this display turned on, so display, head-up display, poly count. And what we're trying to do, make sure you're using your UV workspace, so change your workspace to UV editing. It's just the nicest layout that gives you the editor docked over here. You still got your channel box and everything. Of course, you've deleted your history, saved your scene, multiple backups, multiple locations, have no chance of losing all your work. And you want the UV toolkit, so we'll use some of these features. But what we're trying to do is lay out a single texture in this square here, the 0, 1. So it goes from 0, it goes into negative, and in the positive we go from 0 to 1. In the V is vertical, the way I think of it, and U is horizontal, so UV 0 to 1. So everything has to be in this square. And our basic process is unwrapping, placing them around, and then packing them into the square. So ultimately the reason we're unwrapping, of course, is so that we can make a texture. So here's someone's done this fan art of Tracer, but it really gives you an idea of what you're trying to do. Is you need to unwrap these smoothly so that you can, and nicely, cleanly, with finding the nice balance between seams in your model and minimal stretching in your UVs, so that when it's all laid out, you can sit there in whatever painting application you're using, Photoshop or whatnot, and paint your model in a way that makes sense to you. And some of the things we'll be looking out for is getting straight lines. So you can see this piece, whatever that relates to, probably the belt or something, it doesn't matter what it is, but that would be a lot easier to paint as a straight line than as this curved piece. So we want to be able to straighten pieces out. Obviously we don't want stretching, we can see the details. So that's the sort of thing we're trying to do with this unwrap. That's what the ultimate goal is. Before I move on though, start unwrapping, I need to just double check that I've got a clean model, clean scene. So I might actually just go back to the classic view just momentarily, and what we use is mesh cleanup, and I'll open up the options. Now I'd say 9 times out of 10 you want this set to select. You don't want it the default, which is clean up. When you run it will automatically change your settings for you, and select will just show you what the problem is and you can clean it up. And then you tick your options to say what you're looking for. Probably the 2 most common things will be faces with more than 4 sides, in other words n-gons, and non-manifold geometry. So I'll start with this bridge, and I'll just hit apply, and it shows me I've got some problems. So then we start to investigate, and right away I can see what it's highlighted is n-gons. So there's an n-gon and there's an n-gon, and it's highlighted these green ones. I suspect these green ones will be issues that Maya can fix for me, but I just want to double check. So I'll start by just selecting this face and zooming in, and we can see straight away that's an n-gon, so it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. And so we just grab our multi-cut tool and figure out how we want to clean that up. I think I'll just do it this way, nice and easy. And I've probably got the same over here. So basically I've just not completed that bevel. I actually prefer it that way. Be careful of long, thin triangles. So I'm just going to hit Control Delete and come back to my multi-cut tool. And I think I'll go this way, it's just a lot cleaner. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if I forget which one it is, it's no problem just to hit apply again. And it's this face in here. What I could do is just select, don't think this one's a problem. I'll select these two and just isolate. So I'm only looking at these faces and we can see the issue. So, sorry, hold down Shift and go to Shift and right mouse and go to multi-cut, and we'll just connect these. Now it looks like I've joined these guys, so let's just deal with it that way, but that's making me wonder, do I need this edge? I do if I want this bend, so I'll just leave that and turn off isolate. Let's just deselect it. So I'm in object mode each time I run this, and I'm just clicking off my scene to make sure I haven't got anything selected, hitting apply, and I'll just turn off non-manifold. I just want to focus on these n-gons. Faces with more than 4 sides, apply. So it's still not happy with this. And I haven't prepped this video. This is, I intentionally wanted to show you my workflow and how I deal with problems. So, you know, it may not happen quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I'm not seeing why it still thinks that's a problem. It doesn't actually look like an n-gon. And it's selecting same faces. Let's double check. One thing is always good to do is double check you've only got single verts. So what I'm doing here is dragging, selecting. I'm not just clicking on it. If you click on it, it's only going to select one. If I drag select, it'll select everything underneath that drag selection, which will then show me I've only got the one vert there. One thing that sometimes is a nice easy way around this is simply delete those faces and rebuild it. I could just extrude and sew them together. I like the mesh tools of Pens and Polygon. It's a nice tool, and you just click on an edge and then follow the instructions. It's got a little arrow saying where to click on the next edge. I just click on each edge and hit enter to lock that in. And once again, this is an n-gon, so I've rebuilt the exact same shape, of course, but it's brand new geometry. So let's just see if that's made a difference at all. It has. So there's something about that geometry it doesn't like. That's always a little bit weird when Maya does that, and that's the stage where, as long as you've checked the model by using select and it's shown you the issue, I think it's okay to use cleanup as long as you're aware of what it's going to clean up. So instead of having to rebuild it like I just did for this one, what I'll do is, so I know, just to go over this again, I know by having it select and only having n-gons selected, faces with more than 4 sides, if I hit apply, it's just giving me this one face. And I've inspected that face, I've done what I think I need to do to clean it up. It doesn't appear to... 1, 2, 3, I mean, that doesn't look like an n-gon to me. Oh, I've got these guys as well. I might just delete those. It's always good to jump in the wireframe and double check what you're looking at. So it wouldn't let me select inside there. I'm just going to drag select and then unselect by holding control. So I've only got this face, this sort of pentagon face. If I hit 5 there, we can see it's inside the model. So I actually don't want that from an efficiency point of view. That's extra geometry. Even I don't want to clean that up and leave it in there. I just don't want it, so I'll hit delete. And I've probably got the same in here. So just real quick, hold control, drag select, hit delete. I've probably got the same happening over here. So, you know, quickly dragging and then deselecting things you don't want is a pretty important skill to be comfortable with. Like, I'm not sitting there orbiting around weird angles trying to select that thing. I'm just jumping in and deleting it with a quick select. And before I move on, I was just considering reducing this further, but I don't think I will. So what I was thinking about, before I had a lot of these edge loops through here every second division, I've deleted those. I was considering going further, but I won't. So now I'm going to run this again. So it's still on select and just n-gons. I hit apply, and you can see in the wireframe I've just got this face. I don't think that's a problem because I've already dealt with that. So now what I'm going to do, and this is that 1 time out of 10 where I change it back to clean up. I'm just going to zoom in and see what it does. Hit apply, and as usual it doesn't make a very nice model, and I can see straight away actually that's highlighted for me exactly what the issue is. I've had this vert through there. I'm going to undo that and just manually clean that up because it's such an easy fix. I missed it first time because I had this face isolated. So I'll isolate that, and it's very clear now these two edges are my problem. So easy to fix. Let's just pretty much do what Maya did actually. This one I might just come down here. I don't want it to make a long triangle. That doesn't connect to anything under there, so it's not like I'm adding any extra detail. So, because I don't have a face underneath here, that black bit, so I'm terminating that edge loop, and it's nice and low poly. So select and no n-gons. It deselects to show you it's all good. So now I'll do the non-manifold, select the model first, and we can see it's not liking these verts. It's going to quickly inspect what the issue is, see if it makes any sense at all. So if I drag select, it's not a single vert, so multiple verts, it's only one vert. In this case, because it's only selecting, there's some issue with the original cube I made, and then when I've duplicated it and rotated it through here, it's gone through and repeated that issue, but it doesn't seem to be anything major. This is a case of asking Maya to do it for me, and let's just see what happens. Hit apply, reselect it, and it seems to have cleaned it up without actually radically transforming the geometry, whatever the issue was with that vert. I'm just going to go back to select and hit apply, and it deselects to show me there's no problems with that model. So that's the process in a nutshell. I'll just quickly go through and do this one. So it's got no non-manifold issues, and just double check it doesn't have, yep, that's fine. And so that's everything checked. I'm not doing the ground for this project. I just wanted to quickly show a couple of processes. So let's get into the unwrapping. So that's the cleanup workflow. So now we come into workspace, and I'll start with this thing. So this lantern, and I'll duplicate copy its unwrap onto this model. So unwrapping, it's a matter of I won't explain the process. I won't explain the background and the concepts of what we're doing. I'll just do it, and you can follow along. So UV, we want to start by camera-based unwrap. You can see that's created UVs based on this model, and it's got no seam, so I'm not seeing any white. Now I want to come into the 3D cut and sew tool, and you want your checkers on so you can see how it looks. And I also like to turn on, this is a bit bright and an eyesore. If you turn on this image, then it's got a slider, so you can slide this down, and it's just a little bit more subtle and easier to work with. And so now I'm in the 3D cut and sew tool, that's that icon. I want to make sure I'm in edge mode. So right click component, this is how we changed into different sub-objects modes. We're going to need edge, and later we'll need UV shell. So it's right click out to add components and then to edge. Hopefully it's done that for you by default, and we just start cutting. By default, because that's a open face down the bottom, that's obviously a shell. It's not a shell, texture seam, because it's got nothing to connect to. So we've automatically got one down there, and I need a vertical line, so I'm just going to double click, and it does a line. And I think I'll just open this top section. So this cut will come out here and unfold. This whole cylinder, like a cylinder, will unfold openly. And I can what I'm doing is holding shift and adding to my selection. And I'm just thinking I'm going to need at least, I might cut it like that. So I'll leave one seam, so that'll fold upwards and connect to this part. So once I've selected the seams I want to cut, so holding Shift and adding to that selection, just hit X, and that cuts. If you forget any of these tools, just the shortcuts, just with the tool selected, come into your tool settings, and you can see here is all the keyboard shortcuts. So let's see, I'll do a cut through here. So I'm trying to think about where it's somewhat hidden. You know, this model's probably going to be viewed mainly from above, so putting the cut down the bottom makes more sense. It's probably going to be viewed more from the front than the back, so putting it at the back probably makes more sense. You're just trying to pick the most logical places to put these, where they're least noticeable. So I'll do the same here. I'll make just these three. So select these two, hit X, and cut those three, leaving that one connected means this will fold upwards and be a part of a long line for all of this. So same down this end, I'm just going to select these ones and hit X, and that's probably going to be okay. Yeah. Okay. The chains, I'll just do a seam through the middle. So I'm just double clicking and it's selecting that loop, and I'll need, it's got a hollow. I've cut the top there, so they're hollow here. So I think that should unfold okay, just like that. But these ones need a vertical cut, so I'll do this one, that edge. So it's this vertical one that's barely visible. I think you could probably see it here. I think that will work okay. I'm just going to unfold that when I'm ready and come back to it if it's an issue. This thing, okay, now double clicking that, it didn't go all the way around, makes me wonder if there's an issue. So I'm just going to hit Q to get out of the tool and just double check if there's any problem. So I'm just looking for verts on top of each other. Doesn't seem to be a problem, and it did come up. It went through the mesh clean process with no problem, so I'll just keep going. Turn that tool back on. This button here shows you the last tool that you've used. Bit concerned, it should just really double click in one hit, so it seems like there could be a problem there. Now before I start chopping up horizontally, I want to do a vertical slice all the way through the center. Again, thinking about where it's least visible, which will be this one. So because I haven't chopped this, that does a nice cut all the way through. Actually, I don't want, so I'm just going to, I don't want the cuts like this. You can see it's different shades. It's got a cut all the way through the center. I just really want the cut on one side to treat it like a cylinder. So I'm going to hold Control and just go through. What I can actually do is hold Control and you should be able to drag. It's just quick to hold Control and not double click, just click to not uncut, to sew. What I'm doing is sewing those UVs back together. So I've got this line connecting up in there. These bar things will need to be chopped up. Just thinking about if I want to chop it through here, or potentially I could do these slices which will let it all unfold nicely, but I think I'll just leave it sewn together through here. It'll cause a little bit of stretching, but I think that's better than having a seam at every edge. So if I think that's good, I'm not sure, but let's find out. So now hold down right mouse, component UV shell, select the whole thing and hit D. So D for unfolding. Make sure I'm in the viewport, hit D, and that unfolds. I'll just turn my checkers back on. And it does it rotated, so if you come into your UV toolkit and just go into the arrange and layout and orient shells, so that aligns it nicely. Also, if you go layout, there's some overlapping, so the layout button, it just packs it automatically for you, leaves a tiny little space in between, which is fine. And I just want to look around and see how it goes. So the large beams are all fine and not stretching. It's worked quite well. I'm happy with the chains. There's a tiny bit of stretching, but I think that's a good balance between stretching and seams. And the lantern thing is fairly good. Cool. All right, I'm happy with that. So now what you do, that's the unwrapping in a nutshell. And if this was the only asset, I could basically just export this UV into Photoshop and start painting it. But that's not the only asset. I've got a whole diorama scene that I'm building here. So what you do, the workflow now, is I'll just hit Q to get out of that cut and sew tool. I usually go to UV shell. You can also just go to UV and drag select, but UV shell lets you easily collect individual shells. What you can do is select it and just move it off somewhere. Before I move on, I just want to check these round pieces. Now, this will actually be a little bit tricky to texture because I'm hand painting this and I don't want to have to try to freehand a slight curve. So this is where it's a good example, straightening this up so it's a bit like this will make it much easier to texture. It'll slightly increase the seams, the stretching, but I think it'll be worth it when it comes to the texturing stage. I'm just going to move them up out of the way. And what I usually do is pick one edge that I want to straighten, so I'll pick probably the longer edge. I'm just going to hold down Control and unselect those. So I've only got that longer edge selected. And then in your UV toolkit, come into the Unfold option and click Straighten Shell. And let's see, that should have actually worked. So let's go straighten UVs. The problem with straighten UVs is it only straightens the one you've got. I was expecting, just select the two of them and see how it go. No. Let's try straighten shell again. I'll turn off the, no, it's not playing nice. Alright, so I will do it this way. So just selecting just the UVs that I'm interested in and straighten UVs works okay, and it's this edge is shorter, that's the top one, than the bottom one. So I don't want to, like I could come in here and scale this so it looks nice in my UV shell, but we don't care about how pretty it looks. We care about it being functional, and you can see by changing the stretch so that it looks pretty in here means it's distorted and looks worse in 3D, which is not what we want. So that's actually correct. It's automatically given us that stretch. Yeah, so you can see me playing around there to get the effect I want, often selecting just the UV shell. Hopefully I'll come across something else later in the scene that will work for us. Selecting just an edge loop that you want to focus on straightening, like that, and then clicking straighten shell. Usually we'll straighten the entire shell based on the selected edge loop, but it hasn't worked in this case. So as an alternative, I've just selected all of the UVs just on this one, and this time I'm clicking straighten UVs. Make sure I turn my UNV back on. No, sorry, I don't want V. I only want to straighten it in the U. It'd be kind of nice actually if instead of U it was called H. UVW is just an analogy for texture space for XYZ. But the way I think of it, the way I remember it, is V is the vertical. So once you know your vertical, then the U has to be the other one, which is the horizontal. So by turning off the vertical, I'm only aligning these in the horizontal, theoretically. Now that's worked anyway. So we can see it's going to start rotating as we come around more at the back, but the texture is largely straight I'm just wondering if I were to drag these up, how much will that distort my image? And the answer is quite a lot, so I'm not going to do that. But that's, in any case, worked. That's going to be a lot easier to texture when I get to that stage. So let's just pack this a little bit, just making sure it's not overlapping other shells. So I do have a couple of overlaps. I'll just free these out a little bit. I'm not concerned about trying to make it fit into 01 obviously down there. I'm just trying to make a little bit of packing easier. The packing process happens later, so all we care about is they're not overlapping really, and they're generally in the same space. I usually don't worry too much about what I'm doing right now until the end. So that's unwrapped. UV shell mode, and I'm just going to move them away from this 01 space. The scale's a bit ridiculous. I've made it, sorry, turn the checkers on. If you make it nice and small, just scaling it so I can pick a resolution where I can see the checkers easily. Now I'll apply this unwrap to this guy, and the way I'll do that is with the transfer attributes. So select this object and I shift select the one I want to transfer it to. You can see that's not unwrapped. I come into the mesh transfer attribute options, and all of your default settings are correct except for sample space. If you change that to component and hit apply, we can see that's unwrapped. And it's just transferred the UVs that were down there into copied exactly the UVs on here. Now, these UVs are overlapping. If I pack these at the end in 01 space as they are, they're going to have the exact same texture. In this case, I think I want that. I don't think I really need to worry about making those unique. But if it was something like these poles, then that would be a different story. So let's just do this one. Let's see how we go. So same thing, camera based, and then cut and sew. It's in face mode, so I'll just jump to edge. It doesn't always automatically put you in face, unfortunately. And now it'd probably be a bit easier if I separated all these pieces, but I'm just going to give it a go. Let's see, I'll go with this edge. I'll leave that bit joined. So I've just hit Control click to sew that back in. I didn't want that separated. So this whole section will unfold. Now I know from experience that these cube-like shapes won't unfold solidly like this. So what I'm going to do is just chop the little corners, which are barely visible in 3D. So I'm just hitting X to select those and cut them. So that will unfold, each one of these faces will unfold connected to this front face without any major issues. This will probably be a case of, it would be nice just to separate it and apply this unwrap to each one. But it's just so quick to chop it up the way I am. Then I'm just going to continue on each one. Doesn't want to select that one. I'll come back to it. Let's see. I think I'll just separate out that whole face there. See, this part is actually pretty visible. That's not a good face. This one's fine. But this one would be better off. Yeah, instead of cutting it through, oh no, I will cut it through here. So this whole pillar thing will fold out from there, but this whole face sort of step will be one piece. Alright, so I think that'll be okay. This piece definitely through here. I'm just trying to visualize, when I'm making these cuts, I'm trying to visualize how the different parts will unfold. So, you know, imagining this whole front section lifting up and unfolding to be flat like this piece, and if that's joined, they're going to sort of pull it at each corner. So just having that little cut will hopefully avoid that. Now, what I'll do here, so that's got no base. Doesn't want to select. It's kind of annoying. I'm just thinking I don't have a face in there, do I? Trying to see this purple step. I'm just going to get out of this tool real quick. You can always jump back and forth pretty easily. I'm just worried about this face. When you're unwrapping, if you come across a problem or potential problem, you need to deal with it at the time, not just ignore it. And so I'm just trying to see inside the model, I'm worried about this face. Because I've just selected that face and I can't see it at all, this face. So I've got a face there on the inside of the model, really bad. So I'll just hit delete. For one thing, we don't want unnecessary geometry in our scene. For another thing, it makes unwrapping easier. So now I'll just come back to my cut and sew process, make sure I'm in edge. You can see that's cut automatically because there was a face in there, and that's actually made it a bit easier. Now, let's see, this will unfold. I'm going to need a cut there. Now, before I continue, what I think I'll do is just copy these UVs over onto this side to make it a lot easier. So, let's see if I can separate this object. Great. So what I can see is, before I move on, I might just 3D cut and sew, and just with this one, so cut and sew, hold down right mouse, component, UV shell, and just hit D, and just so I've unfolded that piece on its own, and I just want to analyze if this is working. There's no point copying it over if I haven't finished it. So I've got some issues, so back to the cut and sew. Let's see this piece. Yeah, I think I don't really have an option. I'm going to need to cut edge mode, cut through here. It's probably a better option than cutting out here. So this is still all joined. So this whole face should separate. Now I'm going to need one there. Oops. On each side. And let's just see how that goes. Cut and sew tool. Component, edge, select it, hit D. And how do we look? Still got issues. Okay, so this can't unfold because I've, back to edge mode, I've got, it's joined on both sides, so it really needs a cut on either side, either that one or that one. I'll just go there. And there. The shading, this UV 3D cut and sew shading system is slightly buggy, like it's not giving me dramatic color changes between my shells. Either that or I don't actually have a shell, but that should be an individual shell now. So if I come into UV shell, I can see it is. It'd be nice if they were different colors. It doesn't always work, but that's fine. Actually, I'm just going to unfold this and see how it looks before I go on. So select it and D. You can see it's very easy to go back and forth between cutting and unfolding. You're not committed to your first guess at where you should put cuts. Now, it's getting some stretching because of the irregular shape. It's not a flat surface. And potentially having a cut. What I'd like to do is just put in one cut here. Actually, I don't want to do it all the way through. I'll just hit Control to sew those back together. So I've just got that one cut. I'm just curious to see how that's going to look. No. I was hoping that this edge. So what I'll do is just hit Q and go to edge mode, select my edge, and in here you can see what it is. So making that cut has just separated these. So it does ease up a little bit of stretching, but there's still stretching all the way through there that's causing lots of issues. And before I continue, I really want to separate this, basically these UVs and these UVs from this middle bit. So what I can see, and if I get confused about what I'm looking at, I can just select the faces in here and think about the process. So what I'm wanting to do is separate out these UVs. Yep, so what I need to do, come back to cut and sew in edge mode and just chop this piece all the way through. Just going to Control click to sew that back in. And let's see, accidentally hit Q there, keep doing that. That's a habit, probably a good habit, it's easy to come back to it. So component, UV shell, select it, hit D, oops, D, and checkers back on. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. That's actually pretty good. Just going to orient and layout. And I might just quickly just hit Q to get out of the tool and shell mode, just quickly move these away. I just want to increase the padding between them because I know I'm going to be packing them manually, so I don't care too much about how it pads them. And I'm also just rotating, having them flat. If you also go vertical, it makes more sense. You kind of want your shells, the bottom to be the bottom, the top to be the top, left, left, right, right, sort of thing. You don't want objects that are, inversed and confusing. Ideally, this makes it easier to texture because you can see what you're doing, but when you start packing, you'll inevitably have to chop it up to make it work. Not a big fan of this shape. That's just a bit of wasted texture space. I'm just going to select these two edges. Instead of 3D cut and sew, I'll just use the cut tool. Same thing really, just cut UV edges. So I've just literally just, you can see they're white, I've added new cuts. Now this is a separate shell. It's still, I don't need to, so I can move this because it's a separate shell. and I'll just lift it up a little bit. I don't need to unfold again or anything. You can see the UVs haven't changed at all. I've literally just separated that. I will actually unfold it, having said that, because with that cut, it might unfold a bit nicer. So again, 3D cut and sew, UV shell, select it, hit D. Very quick and easy. And I'll just reorient and lay out. Because I keep doing that layout button, that's why you don't really want to stuff around too much with trying to get a nice layout early on. You're just quickly positioning things. Alright, so let's now copy that over. So object mode, shift select this one, and mesh transfer attributes. I'm just going to use the same settings as last time, so I click it. Hasn't worked, so let's just see what my settings were. Mesh transfer attributes options. I'll just reset it. Component. Apply. No, that's not working. Just trying settings, trying to work out why it's not happy. Usually component works, but doesn't want to do it now. That's annoying, but I'm just going to cheat. I'll just center my pivot. Just duplicate it. There is no cheating in 3D, it's just finding shortcuts to get what you want. Duplicating it was a lot better option than unwrapping it. Even though it's not a very long process to unwrap something, it's still, I don't want to have to do any more work than I need to do. Really should have, actually I'm just going to undo a couple of times before I deleted it. And now I'll send a pivot, copy that over, and then I can use hold down V and snap. What I might do is snap my pivot to up here, and then hold down V, so hit D to turn off snapping to pivot, and hold down V, which is just snapping to, so D is moving my pivot point, and holding down V is turning on my snap to point. So now I can snap it to that point and rotate it around the spot. You can see that's why it was a problem. It's not exactly the same size. And I'm okay with this being slightly different as long as it aligns. Cool. As long as it aligns with these rail things, generally. Just need to make some slight changes to this, so just so it all lines up. Still quicker than unwrapping it from scratch. And it's a shame the transfer attributes didn't work, but that's Maya, doesn't always want to play nice. So quick workarounds, you know, I've used Maya for so long that I've just learnt to live with it not doing exactly what I want every single time. And instead of worrying about it, it's like 5 minutes, a couple of minutes of work and it's done. Let's just save. Always good to save, and incremental save is nice. So yeah, that's those bits done. Now these should be super easy. Let's do one. Camera based. Cut and sew. I'm going to edge mode. I do actually want the underside because I think, yeah, from the angle, because it's running over a kind of creek thing down here, and it would be possible to get a look in underneath. So I think I need to keep the faces on the underside of these planks. But I'm not too concerned about the seams on the bottom there, so I'm just going to chop these ones on each side. That should work fine. Anytime it's a cube, it's pretty basic. Unfold, unwrap, and just orient those and lay them out a bit nicer. Double check that looks okay. And now I'm just going to try copying those across. So I'm using the transfer attributes. Should just be component space. Why is that not working? Okay, topologies works nicely. It is a different shape, so there's a little bit of stretching, but I can fix that at the end. So I'm just going to hit G to repeat that command. Unfortunately, you have to do it one by one. So if I do multiple and hit G, it just doesn't work. Apply. It's decided to stop working again. That's cool. So for that one, it's pretty distorted. It's giving me the right cuts though, so it is speeding up the workflow, because that's basically all I want. So then I can come through and just unfold each one. So as long as the cuts are good. It's this piece. Something about this one in the middle doesn't want to transfer its attributes. That one's worked. Yeah, that's annoying. I'm just going to manually do that one. It's such a simple chop. Just alright, so they've all got the same cuts now, but they're also all quite different from one another in shape, which is giving distortion. But now that they're all cut up, I think correctly, that should unfold nicely. So in my cut and sew tool, in my UV shell, select them and hit D. And that's unfolded everything. I'll orient and layout. You can see that's all done. Works pretty well. Pretty messy layout, but again, packing later. So I'm just moving this over out of the way. And I think that's all that's left to do now is this. I've done that piece. Let's see if I can transfer it over. Yeah, no, it's a different shape. So the transfer attributes, the reason it's not playing nice, I believe, is because I'm trying to transfer to a model that has different topology. So it just doesn't know how to do that, so it doesn't do it. So it's not Maya being buggy, it's just that I'm being lazy. So I just have to quickly unwrap this. So it's simple. Cut and sew. I mean, this process, firstly, it's a lot quicker when you're doing it, at your own pace, not trying to explain it and explain your thought process. But also, it's not that stressful. It's just a matter of turning on some, 3D cut and sew tool, turning on some music or audiobook or what have you, and just sit there for a bit of time, just accept that you're doing a sort of slow process task and slowly go through chopping things up. It will probably still take a few hours. There's not really any way to get around that. It's something that, a task that you need to spend time on. Just one thing with this cut and sew, when I select an object and hit a face, it doesn't always want to cut. It tends to work nicely if it's coming from an existing cut. Now this piece I want to cut out completely, so what do I? I'm going to need to cut through here. I might just control click to close this one off. Actually, no, I do want that. It's worked. Now I'm just going to select the whole thing and combine it. So Q, give them a select tool, and Shift, right mouse, combine. And I just want to make sure it's all okay. So I've missed these bits, so I'll just separate those out just to make it easier. Isolate them. Let's see, we want probably cut and sew. Cool. Seems to be about done. Now there's a bit of, oh, this one's a bit ishy. I'll separate that. That is not unfolded. That's better. Actually, no, change my mind. Ugh, missed that one. Keep doing that. Keep turning off my cut and saw. Alright, so I've just got some pieces here on top of each other, and you can see I've got this piece not done. So there's a few pieces not unfolded. Just hit and that one's not even cut, so which one's that? This guy. This one is annoying. Alright, let's... Got it. Just noticed that one had a bit of stretching, so let's fix that. You just want to be careful when you unwrap a single piece, the scale is going to be quite different to the rest of it. Actually, quite a few of these aren't unfolded very nicely at all. I'm just going to do them one by one. So let's move these over. And 3D cut and sew. In shell mode, I'll just by doing them one by one, I'm guaranteeing they're all working. It's so quick. It's worth doing. And the other thing is, even though these ones don't look too bad, I want to make sure they're all the same scale. So now they're all identical. So they've all been unwrapped individually into this space. And I can now just go into my shell mode and select them all and orient them and lay them out so they'll all be individual. So that's a lot cleaner than it was before. Just move this over here for packing later. And now that is done with the exception of scaling. So now I just want to basically pick my scale. I'll go with the one I've currently got selected. So these, I want everything to match this scale, I guess. Or actually what I'll do is scale them. So just eyeballing it, but I'm looking at the checkers on this and this. And maybe turn them up a little bit for this. These ones touch big. Now I don't care at the moment that these won't fit into the 0, 1 square. They certainly won't, they're far too large, but all that matters is that they're a reasonably similar scale to each other. And at the end I'll scale the whole lot down together to fit into that 0, 1. So I'm just looking for obvious problems. So these scales are correct. This one's a bit small. This one is huge. Same as this. I suspect this one will be the same problem. These guys. So I'm matching these with this. What's that one? What are they? Not sure what they are, so face mode, select them in face and hit F. They don't appear to be anything. Ah, there we go. Turning off the grid would probably help. Just to figure out what they are. So the scale, again, I've made these correct, but this one's too large. Probably just belongs with here. Not a big fan of this shape. Let's just separate. I just want to cut that. Which makes a lot more sense. Right, so everything seems close in scale now. Not perfect, but close enough that you're not going to notice massive differences in your texture resolution. And so all of these pieces together form this bridge, which I'll just temporarily scale down I don't really care about the size of the textures. I'm just trying to put them into a similar space, and I'll just put them up here. So I've got these objects are unwrapped. What I like to do is combine them. And so you can see, I can still select these. I can still come into UV shell and just go, well, I'll just move them into a similar area. And this whole lot is pretty messy, so I will manually just bring them in a bit. Without being too ridiculous, I'm not trying to pack them. I'm just trying to keep track of all my different pieces that are getting a bit scattered. You can use your rotate tools to just snap something, spin it around. Okay. Well, I will continue unwrapping these, but I don't really see the point in continuing recording step by step how to unwrap. It's all the same process. Hopefully that's shown you the workflow, and you can see they're nicely unwrapped. The checkers are all about the same size. These aren't the same size as each other, so once I've unwrapped more and more objects, what I'll do is come in and start scaling them, UV shells, start scaling them in comparison to each other. So now the bridge is all the same, roughly the same scale size, with itself, with all the components in there. I want to scale it so that it matches the lamppost thing. So I'll just scale that so they look about the same, roughly. As long as they're not dramatically different, the textures will work okay. And so, try to imagine that instead of just 1, 2 objects, I've got dozens of objects. I've done this so I've scaled them all together, and then it's a matter of packing. So I'll scale the whole lot right down and then start manually packing them into this 0, 1 square. And that's the process of unwrapping. Put on some tunes, sit back, grab a cup of your favorite beverage, and just accept that it's going to take a few hours. It's not a stressful process. Once you understand the mechanics of how it works, it's just doing the same thing over and over. It's pretty cruisy. And it's important. If you don't have a nice clean unwrap, it doesn't matter how good your texturing skills are, the model won't look good. So you need to just invest a couple of hours to unwrap your project, and it'll pay dividends when it comes to texturing. So I hope that's helped. Sorry if it's old news and boring, but you probably haven't made it this far through the video if you got bored watching me unwrap something. Yeah, thanks guys. Happy unwrapping.